Shalom.
And welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. You know, mission work is not for the faint of heart. We admire those brave souls who leave behind the comforts of home and go to foreign fields to bring the love of Christ to people in need. And sometimes it feels uninspiring to be stuck at home in the day-to-day of parenting when others are out there changing the world soul by soul. Well, our next guest, Shontell Brewer, is a wife, mother, kindergarten teacher, and associate pastor with Foursquare International in Reno, Nevada. She holds a Master's of Science degree in teaching English as a second language and a Master's of Arts in Christian Studies with an emphasis in urban ministry. Her blog, Nonsense at its Finest, can be found at shontellbrewer.com, and she is the author of Missionary Mom.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're delighted to have you, and you are right. There are people who are, I guess, jealous or envious of these world changers. They go to foreign countries. We see this pastor who was just released out of Turkey, who had been there for 25 years, packed up his family, raised a family in Turkey, and came back with incredible stories of 27 years of ministry in the mission field, and it sounds oh so exciting that his kids were raised to learn foreign languages, and they were able to minister to the Muslim community and build a vibrant Christian community. And here's Shontell and lots of other moms that are stay-at-home moms or dual career, they're raising a family, and they're looking at this and saying, you know, what difference do we really make? These are the world changers. These are the people who are out there that are multilingual, they're learning foreign languages, they're changing nations, and we're stuck at home with a bunch of kids. And what does that look like from a missionary standpoint? And you have tapped into a conversation that actually friends of mine in Florida are having right today. They just started this conversation saying that the missionary field begins at home.
That's wonderful. I love that other people are having this conversation. I feel like we've been given this opportunity up, sacrificing quite a bit, and in order to actually speak life into my kids and bring my kids along to know God themselves, and to be the first Jesus possibly that my kids will ever see. And so I love that you painted that picture that way, and it really, the more I got into describing what it was like to watch missionaries go and do all these things, it actually, I realized they were describers of me as well, and sometimes in a funny way, but really it's us sacrificing sleep. It's putting other people before us. It is at all costs showing love, even on the times that we don't feel like it, but we know in the end that these people need to know God, and then equipping them enough to turn them out into their own communities. And that is exactly what I am doing or attempting to do in my home.
You know, this is a wonderful story, but the story began long before you wrote this book. And the story began with your mom and your dad, and what inspired you? What was the journey that took you to this point where you were actually bold enough to embrace mom guilt, mom envy, and you're not a stay-at-home mom. You're actually a very vibrant school teacher, blogger, mom, pastor, involved in so many areas that you are completely productive in contributing to the kingdom. But we have, over time, and especially the generation that I grew up in, where the stay-at-home mom was the model of the 50s and the 60s, that there were not career moms. That was the unusual and the extraordinary. What was it like growing up in your home as little Shontell?
That's such a good question. My parents were supposed to be hippies, but they were too mature, So I had a pretty funny just background. My father's a musician, and so we were a very lively house. I have three older brothers, and we were very, very close. I grew up with my mom working in the church, and she quickly became a pastor at our church. And she, after my parents separated, she ran the singles ministry. And I think it was watching really the both of them. My dad parented, his creative discipline is mentioned a lot in this book, and it really shaped how I parent and how I discipline, because so much of his focus wasn't about shaming us or putting us in our place. It was so much about diffusing a situation either between us siblings, or he would just kind of ask these questions that got us thinking, and then he would turn us out to make our own choice once we, if we were old enough. And then he would do things like, if we wanted to go to a party, which none of us ever did because it was way too much work, he would make us write a report on what could possibly go wrong, what was the purpose of it. I mean, like, we'd have to turn in a file folder to that man of, what would be the good and the bad that would come out of that party. And at the end of it, because we'd written all of that, we thought, man, this is a lot riskier than we thought it would be. So he really just made us thoughtful ahead of time. And then even if we wanted money, because we really did not have money, so if we were asking for money for something, it had to be in a report form, which he's just a funny guy that way. I think that's why we're all really good writers. All of us love writing. So, and then my mom, she had such a way about her of getting us to understand that we are not without something to give. Even though we grew up, we were very poor, and not so much that we didn't have things to offer to people, but we as kids had the tendency, just because we're kids, to think, well, I don't have something to give. Our food is limited here, and work was limited for us. And so my mom would take us to places to kind of shake us out of that mindset. We would go to soup kitchens, and we would serve on the streets, and she put us in some crazy situations, but it really has always shaped us. And even talking to my brothers as adults, it's shaped us into realizing there's not one of us that don't have something to give. And it just became part of our everyday, which I just, is kind of threaded throughout the stories in this book, that at any age, your kid is ready to start being Jesus to his or her own little community. Even at 5 years old, your child can go into a classroom and speak life into somebody, or ask for forgiveness, or give forgiveness, or, pull along that friend that maybe doesn't have anybody.
Was there a faith component to this upbringing? Were you involved in the church? When did faith become your own?
Pretty early. I actually accepted Christ as my Savior when I was 7, and it was Miss Rosemary asked me, do I want Jesus in my heart? And I just knew that I did. And I waited a while to get baptized, because I'm sometimes I overthink things, but I never enter into a relationship lightly. And so I knew that I wanted to follow after God, but I needed to know 100% all of what baptism meant. And so I waited until I was 13 to be baptized. And I'm glad I did, because I walked into it completely confident in who I am. And at that time already, my mom had made church and youth group were a non-negotiable. If we were in trouble, the only thing we were allowed to do was go to church. If we were disrespectful, we went to youth group. That was the only thing. It didn't matter what crime we had committed, youth group was never off the table. And I would be a completely different person if she would not have thought that way. And that's rolled over into our own house. That's the same standard that we have in our home. But our church really did an excellent job too. Our pastor, growing up, he did a really good job of being others minded. It wasn't just, here are the programs inside of our church. Those can be great and encouraging and really raise up a community, but it was a really good balance of, okay, what are we doing on our streets? What are we doing in our city? And we were raised in Vegas, and so we did a lot of street ministry down on the Strip.
Do you think that your mom was a missionary mom?
I do. And I probably couldn't have verbalized that at all when I was younger, but knowing what it takes to be a mother and knowing what it takes to walk with your kids as they are adults, and just watching how we still interact with her. Today's her birthday, actually. And so, I mean, she's this amazing lady that she's very subtle, and she taught me a distinct right from wrong. And she also would say things like, you don't just walk up and say, this is how I'm going to help you. This is such a wise statement, because I think as Americans, especially, we want to go into a situation and say, here, I have English to offer you, or here I have this food to offer you, or I have all these things to give away to you. But if it's not actually helping, then we are not in God's will, and God's not going to honor what we're doing. And so if we're able to take a step and say, hey, how are you needing help right now? How can I help you, and how can I love you? And then we take that back to God and say, God, is this a healthy way to love these people? Then that is 100% underneath of God's umbrella. I mean, that is submitting to what God is asking us, how he's asking us to love. And I just think he's able to do a lot more with that.
So if we're to kind of understand this, let's set some terminology in place so that our audience can understand, beginning with, what is a missionary mom?
Well, that is someone who looks around, and so specifically underneath of your roof, but also in your work, in your neighborhood, in wherever you are, your church, and they say, I am going to bring the gospel to these people that are around me. And that isn't even just to kids, that's to other moms. That is discipleship to new moms that are younger than us, or maybe they're older than us, but their season is in a younger state than ours. And then at the same time, being willing to learn. We can't just be like, I'm the missionary here. We have to be constantly in a state of being willing to learn and teachable by mentors of our own.
How old are your children now?
My oldest is 20, and she's about to be 21. And then my two seniors are 16 and 17. And then I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old.
And so you are practicing, and this book is really generated out of your experiences. This is kind of autobiographical and also mission focused, and opens up the opportunity for us to understand what we can do and what we can't do. And this is a chapter you devoted in the book, which I think kind of sets the tone for expectation. And expectation, it leads right into your mom guilt kind of scenario that we as moms, and when I say we as moms, I was a single dad for 7 years, so I was the dancing school mom. I was the soccer school mom. I did all that with my daughter. There's actually a picture on the web that I use as my own. It's not my own, but it shows that a daughter saying, "Daddy, put my hair in a bun," and it shows a hot dog bun with a tie wrap around the child's hair. And I actually had to learn how to braid and do makeup and do all those things, but I kind of identified more with the dad that took the hot dog bun and wrapped it in his daughter's hair, because the hair was the biggest issue that I had to deal with for 7 years. Yeah. Was, Daddy, you're pulling too hard, you're pulling too tight. The pigtails, the ponytails, the top knot, the braid, the French braid, all of those I had to master. And I have to be honest with you, guys just aren't wired with the manual dexterity to make sure that every hair is in place. We think if it's off your face, it's good. Yeah. We also think that there should be things like turtleneck bathing suits. And, as a dad, I remember taking my daughter shopping for her first kind of tween bathing suit and asked the question, do you have anything in a turtleneck? I wanted my daughter to be covered up, and of course she never took me bathing suit shopping again. But what can we do and what can't we do? What are some of the things that we should embrace, and what are the things that we try to take on that we probably shouldn't take on?
Well, first of all, your stories were fantastic. I actually just cried laughing a little bit right here. So that was great. You know, I think as humans, but as a woman, I have a constant list in my mind, if I'm not careful, of all the things I'm incapable of. You know, I mean, I don't know if it is simply us choosing what we're focusing on, you know, that battle that constantly is in our mind, or if it is the enemy coming in constantly. I think sometimes we just allow an open gate, and then he's like, yeah, sure, I'll take this foothold. And you know, so we have an opportunity to close that up, you know, and to really have scripture that we speak over ourselves, and really identify with who God says that we are, even if we don't 100% believe it all the time. But so being careful of that. But then, you know, I think the biggest thing that the takeaway from that chapter, and I love that you have brought it up, is that we can't save our children. That isn't our role as missionaries. That is not our role as mothers. And I think that sometimes we think we can, and then we're really disappointed when our kids make a different choice. We feel like they are choosing against us, and that is actually not the truth. You know, our kids can still love us and decide to have a different or no faith. And I know that is really difficult. That is a difficult thing to walk through. We've walked through it in our own family, not yet with my own children, but with my siblings. And, you know, so I've watched my mom really struggle with that. And for her to get to the point of saying, you know, this isn't a rejection on me. This is your choice. This is your free will that God allows. And he's got a different story for you than he did for me. You know, I mean, I chose, and I've been all in since I was 7, and I've definitely had my share of mistakes. But you know, I hope that my mom is proud that she took that time, and she sees that it was worth it for her to take that time to really give us Jesus on her own, and put him before us, so that we went directly to him instead of needing to go through her. You know, and then on the other side of it, we just have this opportunity. This is what we can do. We have this opportunity to stand before our kids and say, I'm imperfect. I'm a human, and I am on this path, as you know, and sometimes it's janky, and sometimes it feels really crazy. But when we are abiding in God, and we have that connection to him, that true daily laying down ourselves and picking up our cross daily, then we have a confidence that is unshakable, that we are made something new because of what Jesus Christ did for us. And I want my kids to have that kind of confidence. I don't want them to wait until they're, you know, whatever age to be able to choose that. And so what we can do is show them that that veil was torn for them as well. You know, when Jesus died on the cross, he meant them too, even at 6 years old, even at 15 years old, even at 18, 20, 21 years old, that we can do that. We have that chance to create a conduit between the two of them, and get out of the way.
The feeling of inadequacy, the feeling of guilt, the feeling of unmet expectations, the feeling of I'm not capable seems to be rampant. And the shuttling and the scheduling and the demands that children today, the activities, we used to play on the street, and that was our activity. And when the street lights went on, that was our time to go home. We didn't have phones and pagers and those kind of things. It was just, you go as far as you wanted to go, as long as you get back when the street lights, until you're expected within a certain time. When the street lights went on, that was your signal to head on home. We live in a completely different society than we did back then. So you're juggling, and youth group has so many activities, and the church has so many activities, and you have multiple children. Therefore, each one of them is unique and has unique interests. One may need music lessons, one may be sports, involved in sports, one may, and you're shuttling here and you're shuttling there. Are those opportunities, if we look at them correctly, to be our mission field, Do we need to reframe the franticness of parenting into the divine appointment approach to, doesn't matter whether or not you're sitting there with 27 other dance mothers while the kids are inside doing their pliés. That's your opportunity to share the gospel and to have those meaningful conversations with those other 26 mothers. Do we need to reframe our franticness and turn it into an understanding that these are divine appointments? And will that relieve a lot of this guilt that we're not meaningful like the missionary in Turkey?
Yeah, I think it's twofold, because I think we are way overthinking. We think that we are really good parents, or we have this idea that we're really good parents if our kids are involved in everything. And, if they're accomplishing winning awards, and which makes it very extrinsic. I mean, there is very little between me and God if the only thing that I am really focused on is doing the best in the recital, and then I leave right away and I go to gymnastics, and then the next day if there's this routine, because you're not actually leaving space for a relationship between you and your child, which is paramount. I mean, that's the greatest thing that you are ever going to invest in, is the time between you as a parent and your child. But then again, I think that if you take those things to God and say, is this right for our family? Then when you are all in, be all in. When you are a part of dance and you're sitting in the room with all those other parents, then 100% use that opportunity. And one thing that I like to ask my kids, and even say myself when I'm walking into a situation, even if I'm spending time with one other person, I like to say, what am I leaving here? What am I bringing to the table here? And then what do I hope to take away from this situation? And before you walk into any kind of event, even if it's teaching fifth grade for the day, or walking into your office, or walking into a room full of ballerina moms, then if you are thinking so intentionally, your mind shift really changes. Why you're there really changes. If you are looking at every day as an opportunity to share God's love, even if I don't say, I'm loving you with God's love right now, which can, that's a little awkward. Even if you're just in there and you're being kind and you're listening to a mom who's struggling, if you're willing, if you're available, then the Holy Spirit's going to come in behind you, and he's going to let them know in his own way that it's you. That it's him that is the peace bringer in that situation.
We're talking with Missionary Mom, Shontell Brewer, author of the book entitled Missionary Mom, Embracing the Mission Field Right Under Your Roof. This is a book that is filled with incredible tools, candor, honesty, and humor in regard to this calling. And remember that Paul wrote that anyone who's a Messiah is a new creation. You're called to a ministry of reconciliation. You're called to an ambassadorship of God that is available to each and every person, regardless of the role you play in this life. And you are God's ambassador no matter where you are, whether you are in the four walls of your home, or the four walls of your school, or the four walls of your job, or the four walls of your church. And this book addresses the struggles and the guilt that many moms feel like they're not making a difference. And the truth is, you are making an incredible difference, because you are raising up the next generation of pastors and leaders and evangelists and missionaries. And all that you're doing is sowing seeds into the next generation of mothers and fathers and husbands and wives. And it's time we reframe parenthood into what it is, which is a missionary field. And if you don't think that the person who went to Turkey had to learn another language, and you think you don't have to learn another language, baby talk is a whole another language. And understanding this foreign language that your children are speaking, and when they learn to ask for things and you're the only one that can translate, you have become bilingual in your own way. And the only difference is between you and the missionary in the field is that right now, nobody is threatening to chop your head off and martyr you. But nevertheless, you are a missionary, and you do have a missionary field. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to rejoin Shontell Brewer and talk about Missionary Mom embracing the missing field right under your roof. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere, and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Shontell Brewer, author of the newly released book, Missionary Mom, Embracing the Mission Field Right Under Your Roof. Shontell, welcome back to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
Shontell, moms have a way of feeling alone, isolated, and really not feeling, they hear the message on Sunday, they hear the message from the pulpit, do more, be the hands and feet, flow in your gifts, use your gifts, get more involved. And then you've got this age range of children at home, you've got a husband to deal with, you have carpooling issues, and it's a matter of, listen, people are telling me to be intentional. I can't be more intentional than answering the cry of a child or needing the homework, and whatever my schedule and agenda is that I have in this wonderfully planned calendar, I might as well just throw that thing away because life does not happen according to my schedule, and it can become pretty discouraging and pretty lonely. What advice do you have for moms that are trying to become missionary moms, and what tools are you offering them to kind of equip them for this challenge?
Well, first of all, Jesus took naps. I think that is a great example that he set for us, that he rested, he went away from people and he rested, and then he was constantly checking in with God. And I'll never understand it, and I'm grateful for that. I don't want a God that I can fully understand, but I've always loved how God can take even a 10-minute break for me, or an actual 20-minute nap in the day, or even just sitting and reading a few scriptures, how he can take that and completely fill me back up with energy. And I mean, his word is for real living. It is life-bringing, and it's super encouraging. And so I think when we get to those points, constantly bringing any of those shoulds, any of those expectations that other people put on us, taking them to God if we have the idea that maybe those are for us. And then really making sure that we're not allowing other people, our church, even our own pastors, to be the ones to decide what we should and should not be doing. It is Scripture that teaches us what we should and should not be doing, and encourage us along the path that we have been given. Not everyone has the same path, and so you'll come across people, even other mothers, who seemingly have it all together, and they'll say, well, this is what we're doing. This is this is really working for us. And you'll take a look at it and think, no, there's no way I'm doing that, or that's not my gifting, that is not my skill. And you're probably right. That probably is not what God has for you. And so you even pretending or trying to go after that would be you outside of God's will. And so instead, ask God, ask him to reveal to you, and even just taking time and to be thoughtful about what are the gifts that you've been given, and then how can you use those in your space where you are right now.
In the book, excuse me, you give a life skills list. Talk to me about that. Help me understand that.
So when I first submitted that list, it was probably about 10 pages longer than what is in the book right now. But I just sat down one day and I thought, what are all the things, once I really had embraced that I only had until I had 18 Christmases start to finish in order to pour into my children. Once I realized that, I had already spent several Christmases with them. And so I thought, man, I have a really limited time. If I want them to leave like the humans that I'm imagining in my mind, I'm actually going to have to do some work. I'm going to have to put in some really explicit teaching with them. And so it's on the list. It's just kind of a boost for you, but you fill those margins, get a notebook and decide, what do you want your children to be able to leave with? And some of the examples on there are things like making a quesadilla, how to boil hard-boiled eggs, sewing on a button, ironing clothes. That was probably the most hilarious lesson that we walked through. There was iron-shaped holes in several pans here in this house for a little while. And, but just being really intentional, even things like learning how to forgive, how to give forgiveness and how to receive forgiveness, how to go straight to God in prayer, how to give and receive criticism. These are honestly lessons that a lot of adults could use as well.
The uniqueness of being a missionary mom, you're also involved in kind of the overarching pro-life, anti-sex trafficking, anti-bullying. There's a whole lot of issues that are facing moms today, especially moms of kids in school. What role does the missionary mom play in engaging in some of those areas? And is this something that they should feel that falls into their area of responsibility to get involved? It doesn't always take your kid coming home with a bullying issue for you to get involved in the larger issue of bullying. What do you feel is like the missionary mom's mandate, if there would be one?
I can sum that up pretty easily, actually. It would be teaching your kid to find his or her voice, and then equipping them to turn around and help their friends who haven't yet found that voice to find theirs, to be an advocate for those who have not yet found their own voice and are not quite brave enough. My kids are not being raised in an abusive home or a neglectful home, but they know a lot of people who are. And I actually I'm on the prevention team for a local nonprofit here in town, and my kids come and do a lot of that work with me. And my daughter is actually doing some volunteer work. My oldest is doing volunteer work with them through art therapy. And because of the work that we've done, because of the others mindset that we have cultivated here in my house, I've watched her now as a young adult turn around and see a lot of hurt in our own community, where she's definitely called to be a missionary, and she's gone to many countries overseas. She is also, in the time that she's not doing that, she's fully invested in her community and leading and loving well in that way. And it really is as an advocate. So because she is more firmly rooted in her faith, because she understands what it means to know herself and to know what she believes, she's actually freed up now, where she's not so consumed with finding that as a 20-year-old. She's free up now to look around and say, I see that you're hurting, and I think I have something that can help you. And that isn't just food and a ride someplace or a listening ear. It's also God's peace. And I love watching. I feel like she's such a fruit that has come out of my life, that she is a byproduct of the work that we've invested as parents, my husband and I. And and then you said something else. When we teach our kids early on that it's normal to be thinking about other people, it just kind of becomes their way of life. And my son was in a situation where he was in ninth grade, a ninth grade boy. I mean, you really can't get more awkward stage wise. And he came home and he said, I think that my friend is being bullied. And his friend was actually being bullied. A male was being bullied by a group of girls. And so my son, right away, he said, do you want me to talk to my mom? And the kid was like, what? I don't think so. And so eventually, though, my son went to a teacher. Actually, really quickly, my son went to a teacher, and the teacher didn't believe him, because what boy would be bullied by girls? And I have to tell you, a lot of them, with the standard as we're raising girls these days, has shifted a little bit, and that we just think that that's not possible. It kind of just gives them the window of possibility. But he was being physically bullied. They were tripping him, pinching him, and just small things. But he was really feeling it, and he was developing an eating disorder because of it. And so that's when my son and I had lots of conversation about it, and I finally said, I need to step in. It's, this is becoming big, and I need to talk to somebody. So he and I had so much conversation about it. And at the end of it, I couldn't believe, I shouldn't have been so shocked, because this is what we work for, right? But I couldn't believe what a voice my son was able to be for this other boy. And I was so proud as a mom to watch him say, this is unacceptable. And he went and confronted those girls. It helps that he's like 6'2" and, really buff, but he went to those girls and said, you need to knock it off. This is unacceptable behavior. And every one of them got into trouble. I believe they each got suspended, but that was because my son was willing to speak up for somebody else. And I love that.
Shontell, you proved the point that a missionary mom, by example, will raise missionary-minded children, whether or not it's for the foreign mission field, which we tend to look at as being the quote-unquote mission field. And you have led by example by your involvement, by your engagement, by the structure and the equipping and the level of communication that you're actually raising up a generation of kingdom changers. And isn't that the role of every mom?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's the thing that I'd love to bring to light more, that we have such an opportunity to create. I mean, there's just one of me, and I know that I do a lot and I care a lot. And I think as moms, we are given this level. I mean, I can't speak for dads. I know that my husband cares deeply for things, but I just know as moms, that whole mama bear stereotype is a stereotype for a reason. I mean, we are very protective, and we see spiritual and physical needs in other kids, especially, that maybe other people don't see. And we just, rather than feeling like there's nothing I can do about it, that's exactly, I think that God allows us to see those needs, because those kids are either lacking a mom who is being as intentional, or they just, they really need Jesus. And so I'm happy to be the one to bring that to them. But then there's only so much that I can do. I'm just one girl. And so with 5 kids, if I am raising up these children in a way that they go straight to God, they are not going to need to bring their friends to me or to our pastor to say, hey, this is my friend and he needs prayer. My kid can just stop and pray with them right there. They can bring, people to God just the same. And that they've been raised in that confidence and to be able to step out, and then they just, and then God takes them down their journey, rather than me needing to be the one that takes all 5 of my children down that journey. I've laid a foundation with them and created hopefully what is their new normal of loving well and constantly living on mission. And then when I am sending them out into the world, even to school or to drive or, all sorts of places, I don't have the fear in me, because there's such a conversation that happens constantly between us, that I'm not as fearful when I send them out, where I could see how it could be really scary to send our kids out, because we don't know any of the people that they're interacting with. We're not part of their school situation, and we don't actually know everyone that they're interacting with. But I know my child, and I know what Scripture says about how we raise them, and I know how faithful God is.
Shontell, the book is entitled Missionary Mom, but we cannot avoid the fact that in many of these homes there is a dad. And we have yet to talk about what the role dad plays in the creation or the encouragement. We often talk about how much we love the Proverbs 31 woman. We never talk about what the Proverbs 31 man looks like. We never talk about what attributes he has to possess in order for her to become esteemed in the city, to be called blessed by her children. He has a job to do in this equation in order to be, and it's kind of like Aaron and her, in the role they play with Moses in lifting up his arms so the victory would belong to the Lord. It's wonderful to be a missionary mom, but if dad's not on board, if dad is feeling left out, and I don't think we cover that in the book, but it's certainly something that is kind of the elephant in the room, is that you're a go-getter. You're a ball of fire. You're a multitasker. You're a visionary. You are someone that's going to provoke a lot of moms to envy because they wish they could be you. But what about the dads? What role do they play in this? What role should they play in this? And should they come alongside of the missionary mom and become a missionary dad?
I think 100%. I have actually heard from a lot of husbands of my friends who have read the book already, and they say, "Man, there's a lot in here for me. I wasn't thinking there was going to be a lot in here for me." And I fully agree. I have some amazing men in my life, and I was always raised to honor men and really speak highly of them. My husband does things around this house. He does things interacting with my children, even just in how he honors and interacts with me. I would never be the person that I am without the men who are surrounding me, supporting me. And, I actually liken it to how Boaz loved, because he didn't just love Ruth when she showed up in his field by, coincidence, not coincidence. When she showed up in his field, he knew she was a Moabite. That was identified immediately. And how he should have reacted to her according to their customs and laws even probably should have been different. But he said, okay, she's here. She's been brought here. And he didn't just say, hey, let's get married. I'm going to claim you. And it was finished. He actually set her up with, food while she was working. He set her up with water. He talked to his men about saying, you don't put your hands on her, you protect her. And so what he was doing, he was showing her how to love. And then he was showing all those other people how he expected her to be loved as well. And those are the kind of men that if me as a woman hope to get anything accomplished, to ever raise kids, those are the kind of men that we need around us. And those are just the men that I'm looking to surround my children with too. We can't parent alone. There are all sorts of ministries out there reminding women to not mom alone, don't parent alone. We need other people. And when my kids get to a certain age, they need other men and women setting an example of what marriage looks like. They need reminders. They need people who are going to push them back to Jesus and not allow them to be disrespectful to us when they disagree with us. And it's inevitable. I don't live under the delusion that my kids are going to agree with everything that I say. And I'm happy when they push back, because we can have a great conversation and bring it to scripture. But I can't tell you how many men have come up and said, you've got yourself this kid, in particular, our youth leader, he spent so much time with my son. And he said, you've got a really great kid. And I said, dude, you've spent every Wednesday with him for the last 2 years. I think that you are part of having this great kid with us, and I appreciate that investment that he's made in my son. And it's really shaped who my boy will be forever.
Shontell, if you could give a new mom just getting started one word of advice in regarding to becoming a missionary mom, what would that be?
Probably to find grace, extend grace to yourself. I think a lot of times we don't do that. And don't look left or right. You're not looking left or right to know how to be a mom. Look right here. Look right to God and say, Lord, how do you want me to be a mom each and every day? How do you want me to parent these kids at this age and this stage? What is it that I'm bringing to the table here? And what is it that I hope to take away from this season with my children? And there's going to be difficult times, but if we invest and we take the time as early as possible, all the way down to infancy, if we take the time to invest in our children, then it will go well with them. The Bible says that a son or daughter who honors their mother and father lives longer. We have the opportunity to set a bar so that our kids are respectful to us and honor us and teach them how to honor well, and it actually adds years to their life. That's a lot of power.
That is a lot of power. Spoken directly from a woman of power, missionary mom Shontell Brewer, author of the book by the same name, Missionary Mom, Embracing the Mission Field Right Under Your Roof. Moms, you are not to be compared to the missionary that's in Korea or in China. You have your own mission field, and God has His appointment for you. And that appointment begins in the home. And rather than compare yourself to what it is that others may seem to be glorified or more significant to the kingdom, You are exactly in the mission field God has called you to be. And it is your opportunity to expand that mission field outside the four walls of your home, into your community, into your schools, into your businesses, into your hospitals, into the local neighborhoods. And that is what God has called you to do. It is not a less than or more than. It is what He has entrusted you with. And it's time that you answered that call. It's time that you understood that you can be a missionary mom, that the mission field God has given you may start out small, but the compounding is incredible. And as you've heard from Shontell herself, it's affecting and impacting the lives of other youth, of other families, of other parents, of other communities, and it's extending out to you as well. If you've ever wondered whether or not the mundane that you're doing is really mundane in the kingdom, I'm here to tell you, and so is Shontell, that it's not mundane at all. It actually is the fabric and the fiber that keeps the kingdom together. The message is encouraging, it's uplifting, and it's equipping so that you too can become a missionary mom and embrace the missionary field right under your roof. Shontell Brewer, thank you so much for sharing this incredible story with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. This has been really fantastic.
I'm so glad. God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.